In a dark world, remember to be the light. Welcome to Black Swan Revelations. Here is your host, the Black Swan himself, Shane.
All right, welcome to Black Swan Revelations. Today we have a fantastic guest, a superstar, Mr. Gary Gates, and I'm going to bring him on. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is his new book, Not So Random Gospel Moments. And we're going to be talking about it, and maybe at the end of the show, maybe we'll talk a little bit about my book. But what I want to show you is just a little trailer here that Gary has in regards to his book, and then we'll bring him on.
Discover the life of Jesus in 90 days with Not So Random Gospel Moments. Written by Gary Paul Gates, with a heartfelt foreword by friend and YouTube host, Shane Landstrom from Black Swan Revelations. Have you ever wondered why the story of Jesus is told 4 times in the Bible? Not So Random Gospel Moments is a 90-day devotional designed to guide you through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, one chapter at a time. Each day includes a scripture reading, key takeaways, and insights to help you deepen your understanding of Christ's life, teachings, death, and resurrection. Whether you're new to the Gospels or seeking a fresh perspective, this journey will strengthen your faith and illuminate the richness of God's Word. Take the challenge. Spend 90 days with Jesus. Be transformed. Get your copy of Not So Random Gospel Moments on Amazon. Now available in paperback, hardcover, or as an instant download to your Kindle app or device.
Well, I got to tell you, your voice is getting better and better every time. That was amazing.
That wasn't me, but it could have been.
It could have been. It could have been.
It could have been.
Welcome to the show.
Well, howdy, brother. I know I've been busy writing, and it looks like you've caught the virus too. So are you working on your 4th book now?
Yeah, 4th book. Not quite. I think, what do you have now? 8?
I think that's about right. 8 books, but then the children's books, I have one of them that's in English, Spanish, and Chinese, and they're all 3 in coloring books, and then I think my 2nd book's in Spanish also. So if you added all that together, plus a hardback version of a merger of 2 books that I put out, because it's about 8 different books there, so 16 if you added all the variations. But I tell you, back in the summer, my testimonial, Surviving What Could Have Been, I tell you, God lit a fire under me then. It's like, get your book done,
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lady, I actually gave her book to my pastor's wife, but Danielle's her name, and she sent me her testimony in email and wanted to do a program, which we did, and she was telling her story that's in her book, and her book was a small one too, and through her I learned about some of the publishing hoops she had to go through, and then God showed me a few of his, and before long I had my 6 years in the making, my first book completed and published in September. And since then, done a couple others, and then got into doing 3 different children's books. And each of those cartoons, incidentally, are based on our children. And that's where those cartoons came from. And I use their names in the book. And so that's where those came from. And then Easter was, is right here upon us. It's approaching, and when we turned into the new year, and you had a lot to do with this. You don't even realize, brother, that you have set a fire under, I think, not only me, other people that watch your show, to get into the Word more. And last year, I went through the Bible numerous times, all the way through, and then all the way through again, and I think about 6 times, I believe. Listening through with the audio Bible, but this year I did a little something different. I wanted to go through the books 5 times. So if I read Genesis, I'll read it 5 times, and then go to the next. Well, I wouldn't say I got bored with the Old Testament, but I did want to kind of get the New Testament because it's shorter, get it done. And when I started to go through the Gospels, and you're hearing that same story 5 times in a row. And I listen to the Bible be read through Bible Gateway, which I think's awesome. Got a lot of different people reading, so if you get tired of one voice, you could switch to another. Some people wish they could do that with mine. And but when I started going through the Gospels, I was like, Lord, I've always wondered, why in the world did we go through the Gospels? And it's like, why tell us the same story 4 different ways?
Mm-hmm.
And then he reminded me of my parents. In order to get me to do something, what did they have to do? They tell me 3 or 4 times or more.
It's funny.
And I think that's kind of God's way of showing us that here you go into the New Testament and you start it off from one person's perspective, and then another, and then another, and then another. And some go a little bit deeper, telling about the birth. Others might not. Some talk about his early part of his ministry, and then others may back off. Or you might see the same healing told by a few different perspectives. And I just think it's interesting because how God thought ahead to where we can have this the gospel presented that way and from different perspectives. And so I started thinking, well, how in the world could I do like a bigger book? Because most of mine are pretty thin. I didn't make them for bookworms like Shane from Black Swan. You read my first book, I think, while you're eating a sandwich. In a few minutes.
I was like, it's a little thin, but it's good. But I think you got lots more to talk about in that book.
Definitely.
Sure.
And but with this, I was thinking, well, Lord, it'd be nice if you could do like the Gospels in 90 days. And when I added up all the chapters, wouldn't you know it, was 89 chapters
That's interesting.
in John. So I'm like, if you throw in a long-winded monologue from Shane, that can be day 1 because you can't do anything beyond that. And then each day go through a chapter, and then each of these chapters in this book. So if you read Matthew chapter 1 by yourself through the Bible on your own, or listen to it, and then come to this book and just read chapter 1, and what it'll do is just go through some of the key takeaways from that chapter and a summary to kind of help reinforce what you just got through reading, and then you can move on to the next. Now, some people might do a whole book in a few days. Some people might want to stretch it out, maybe read it a few times before moving on.
Yep.
So that's where this book got birth from that, and just trying to tell people the importance of the story of Christ, and that it's in there for a reason. It's there 4 times, 4 different perspectives. If God put that much emphasis on it, let's take it and run with it.
I like it. And I don't know if you noticed this, but Gary, I got the special edition here. Can you see this at all? Look at the colors. See the colors? Can you see that?
Well, you're really going through it. Yeah.
There it is. Look at that.
Yeah. I didn't do a rainbow version, but I guess that would sell to some.
Well, what I noticed in going through your book is, let's say I wanted to get to Mark right away. Because I got it color coded now, I can just flip over to Mark and start reading. And what I like about your book is I'm not a fast reader. But I could knock this sucker out of the park in a weekend and have a snapshot of all 4 Gospels. And if you do this every weekend, just a little refresher, just go through all 4 Gospels, and here each chapter, each chapter gives you a snapshot of what that entire chapter is about. So instead of taking you hours to read the whole thing, you can, I'm telling you, you can just go, you can sit down and go through Matthew, and then when you get up, you're done the Gospel of Matthew. And then tomorrow you do Mark, and then the next day you do Luke, and the next day you do John, and you're like, now you got a snapshot of the whole Gospels. And then if you want to dive deep, you just go back to your Bible and you can go a little bit deeper or whatever. But I think this is, I've told you this before, I think you're a mega genius.
Oh, whatever. But I like that color code. I love that color code option because I was thinking after I've done it, and I may do it later, is to have maybe so much of that bind be like a black, you know, all for Matthew, and then it goes over a little bit, all of that for Mark, Luke, John, and because ideally you'd want like a old fashioned Bible, like a thumb index type thing, but I'm
Yes.
sure that cost. But doing like a black and white, you know,
Mm-hmm.
thing on the side to kind of navigate would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is my second book in hard copy, and because you got to be a certain size to be hard copy. And I tell you, when I got it in paperback, I was like amazed. I was like, wow, it's got a side to it. It's got a bind, which means
Yes.
I won't blend into the books in the library. I'll stand out. And then when I got the hardback in,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
That's a
I
whole
think the
nother
church.
level. Look at that.
Yeah, my old church
Gorgeous.
hymnal wasn't even this thick. The old church
That's
hymn,
awesome.
and but it just turned out great. But you know, um, I really, you know, I really was messed up in school with reading comprehension. You read a chapter, answer 10 questions, I'd fail it, even an open book. My mind just couldn't wrap around certain things like that. I guess because I just wasn't interested, for one thing. But
Yeah.
um, so for a person that had reading comprehension problems to later on write a book, I'm
Yes.
telling you, God's in that, because it wasn't my goal to write books. I didn't see how that fit with actual media. I'm thinking videos and audio and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
to do the publishing side, I've told a few watchmen in passing, tell your story, because they may come and confiscate all the Bibles out of a place when all the people disappear. Um, a book might get, just an average book might get left behind, might have your testimony in it. I had somebody mention about the Up and Away with Jesus book, children's book. They said, the Bibles and the Christian books might disappear, but this little kid's book, it might just get left behind and be used by somebody and seen,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
that's the greatest compliment that a person that writes anything could have, is that people are thinking of the people to come and how it to benefit them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like leaving and when you think about it, you're also leaving a legacy behind as well. Like I'm thinking about maybe down the road, you've inspired me as well to write a children's book because I have a grandson that is approaching 2, and we've already like that's our tradition. If he comes over to visit or if I go over to his house, we will spend hours and he'll just stack the books. He'll start stacking them, and then I just sit there and read. And he's got the ability, the uncanny ability to be able to focus and just ask questions about the pages and all this. And he was doing this when he was like 14 months old. He was sitting down and I just flip open, like a coloring book from the Bible or whatever. And he would just sit there. And I'm like, man, kids get it at 2. They get it.
Yeah.
So if you can hone in and make a Bible story that fits that kind of a genre from 2 to 5 or whatever, very colorful animals, all this stuff, I think there's something there. And again, that's something that your grandkids could pass on to their kids and all this kind of stuff as well. So
Yeah, and with that, talking about the children's books, I was blessed to meet Michael Pels. My wife and I took a little road trip up to north of Louisville into Charlestown, where Michael Pels and his family live, and it was on a day he did one of his outreaches, and to see that guy work, is just amazing. Him and his whole family and little crew there, but he went ahead, and before I showed up, he bought some of the. Didn't do children's books yet. I had 2 books out, and I think my first one, he took it upon himself. He bought some books, and he has a book table. He gives away Bibles and all sorts of things. And I tell you, to see a kid that's 9 or 10 years old pick up your book and sit down with it, I tell you, that's my New York Times bestsellers list moment right there. I
Yeah,
mean,
for
that
sure.
does greater than that, because that kind of impact, I wish I had that when I was his age,
Yep.
and knew that I wasn't alone, and that you will get out of this. You'll come out triumphant in the end. So when I got home, I'm like, it's good that they picked up that book, but Lord, I wish I had something for their level. And then that's when, Acts of Kindness Begins With Me was birth. And I dedicated it to my daughter, Myra, and that's the depiction, the image that I use is her likeness. But I had a heartfelt thank you to Michael, Judy, and Carla Pels for what I saw that day. And that, um, my goal would be to see these children's books give away, and he has, he's give away
Yeah.
those now, and he's able to minister with them. And I tell you, I just praise God for the little things. We haven't, we're not out trying to make a killing on all this. I mean, I've given
Right.
away more books than I've sold,
Yeah.
but I tell you, it just does something to you when you see a child with their parents in a store, and you see them coming out and their car happens to be next to yours, and you're like, hey, can I bless your little child with something? And you give them this book,
Yep.
I mean, there's just something about that. And my wife and I, we went to our local library this past week, just a few days ago, and I went with kind of hat in hand. I'm thinking, I'm at the battle with these people to try to get anything put in here. I don't know why I was thinking that. I guess because of all the other oppositions we've had, but to walk in there with all these books, not only mine, but I've helped my pastor. We've published 5 books based on his sermons, and then I've helped 2 other ministers with theirs, and now you're the
And
third
you've
minister.
helped me out with mine.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Now some of these I would say, because not so random encounters, not so random, acts of kindness. I try to act in my acts of kindness with compassion 100% of the time, but then there's some times where you just got to have flat out pity for somebody. And let me tell you, folks, I saw the introductory versions of this Black Swan book that just come out, and I'm like, man, this guy needs a blessing. So I helped you out a little bit, but and to
I
commemorate,
appreciate that.
I'm going to give you through the camera some of my
Nice.
homemade cookies, and
Awesome.
you grab it and enjoy. Now that's what happens, folks, when you buy a cookie box on Timu or whatever, or Wish. You think you're getting the big one, like in the grocery store, and it barely holds a cookie.
That's funny.
Measure things when you buy it off Amazon. But
Yep.
I know
So what
Brother Derek always talks about these crazy cookies. I put drugs in the ones I give him. No, I'm kidding. But
that's funny. What's cool too is if you don't have time to wait 2 days for a book, you can also get it on. Can't really see it because of the light. Let's see if I can fix that. Can you see that? Kind of hard
it's
to
still
see.
a little.
But
you
it's
probably have to bring the
kind of
brightness
cool.
down on your device. Yeah.
Like if you're on a plane or something or in an airport, to have it on Kindle or on Fire, Amazon Fire, I think that's pretty cool. And then are you planning on like reading an audio book like for the Gospels, or what's your thoughts around that?
I don't know on that one. Now I did do an audio book on my first book, and I tell you, it's especially with that one. I mean, I wouldn't mind anybody else reading it, but that's my story. I wanted to read it,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
and I tell you, once it's a big chore to read and to have that full vocal,
Yep.
because otherwise it'd be like chapter 1, chapter 2, or something, and then chapter 3
Yeah.
you're back depressed again. Your tone kind of changes, so it's a lot to edit.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think so, but with audio, I mean, it's a lot of editing. But
Mhm.
I'm glad I put it out. But and it's available on Audible, and I've thought about that for the rest of them. But if it shows enough interest, I would.
Yeah.
I've thought about maybe with this, maybe have different watchmen read a chapter
Yeah.
and then
Well, I'm
come in.
definitely going to be doing a little Bible study on this and just
Oh,
go through
bring
it.
it on.
Yeah. So I'll just pick one of the Gospels and then we'll just go through it. And I'll turn it into a nice little Bible study, tidy it up with a
Bring
nice
it on.
little bow.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
And
This
I
will be
do
good.
appreciate you answering the call and writing the forward. Um,
Yeah. No
about
problem.
now it's been about a year, hasn't it? Been about a year that we've known of each other, and
Yep.
I, I'm used to working behind the camera and helping other men of God and stuff like that. So to be in front of one talking, it's taken a lot to get used to that. And I don't think I'll really be ever used to it. But
Mm-hmm.
about last year in February, we were watching fellow watchmen on YouTube on our TV in the living room, and I think we turned on Rick one night and over at Departure Heaven, and my wife's like, get on there," and I'm like, I don't even know any of these people. And then lo and behold, about a week later, I think I was on with Rick, and he invited me on, and I'm trying to get everything squared away and nervous wreck, and finally get on there with him, and was on a number of those shows, and then got to meet you, got to meet Greg over at Uptime, and I remember right after being on a few things, my wife says, "You need to be on Uptime," and I'm like, "I haven't paid my dues yet to be on something of that magnitude." And
Yeah.
it was two months to the day I was finally on Uptime.
Oh,
And
wow.
praise God for it, and I
Yep.
appreciate it. But I remember the first time we saw you, brother. It was on an Uptime episode,
Oh, yeah.
and I think it was your first, debut, Black
Yep.
Swan himself.
Yep.
And then we started following your channel and learning about you. But it's been remarkable to know you, and if I'm ever down and I get that message to you, you're ready, Freddie. You're quick on the draw. You contact me, and I appreciate it. But
Yeah, we've had some good phone calls as well. And
but I
yeah.
definitely wanted my first, Bible study book to be with Shane, and
Aw.
that's such a blessing to me,
Yeah.
and because of your hunger for the Word, and like you've said on your show many times about your wife and your
Mhm.
son blowing the dust off the Bible and all that. I mean,
Yeah.
that should speak to a lot of men and women out there,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, because you need to be the leader of your home and do that,
Yeah.
and to be in the Word, and
Yeah.
it just keeps us all in check.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't make that stuff up. Like if I were to write a script for a movie or something, that wouldn't work having your son blow the dust off the Bible and saying, "Dad, you should be reading your Bible." That's not the way I would flip it. I would make me the hero and I would be like I would start off the whole Bible's memorized and all this kind of stuff, not reading 5 minutes a day, once a month, once a week, or whatever. That's not how I would start the story. Having my son say, "Dad, you know what? You should read the Bible." And then not only being embarrassed in front of my son, but also my wife noticed. And then she started to pray for me. And that's like, I never would have thought that it would have happened that way where she just said a prayer, but she didn't tell me the prayer. That's the funny part. You want to talk about 90 days in the gospel? She prayed for me for 90 days and didn't tell me. Like, we're so used to telling everybody what to do. We're not used to praying for people and praying for our children behind closed doors. We want to do everything in front of them and demand them to do things, demand our spouses or significant other, people at work. We want to tell them how to live, but we're not willing to sacrifice a little bit of time behind closed doors. We're not willing to do that.
Yeah,
And I think that's the trick. If you could do that behind closed doors, you don't even have to worry about what to say in front of people. It'll just come out of you. It'll just come out.
yeah,
Work with my
and
wife.
yeah. Yeah, and I noticed that the more you read the word is and you're talking to somebody. I mean, God will bring to your remembrance, and it's because
Yes.
you've allowed an entry for the word to get in you. And I guess when I did the reading last year, and I'd read it like at warp speed, listening to it, and I'd have it, double speed, and my wife would come in. She's like, "What in the world are you listening to over there? Because it sounds just like this." And I'm like, believe it or not, I'm able to actually pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And I guess
That's true.
listening to it again, it kind of reminds me of my childhood. I've got old TGIF TV shows, that were on Friday night, Urkel and
Hmm.
all them. I've got half of those shows memorized because, I'd record on VHS tape, stuff I'd
Yep.
watch, and then I'd watch it again and again and again and again to the point where you pretty much got the whole show or movie memorized.
Yep.
And you don't think, and these are even things you're not even glued in watching. You're just kind of
Yeah.
have it on and it's playing and you're memorizing it because it's coming into your ears and you're listening to it.
Yep.
I take this to be kind of like that. I mean, how many times have we watched a movie over and over again?
Yeah.
But then you watch it one time and you're like, I don't even remember this scene,
Yep.
and it's just something new and fresh. And that's kind of the way the word is. I mean, you can listen to it once and then
Yep.
twice, and then you're like, oh, I remember that, remember this. But then that fourth and fifth time, it's like,
Hmm.
it's really getting in there,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a good approach. But just get on any kind of Bible schedule you can.
Yeah.
If you have to start with those our daily bread booklets that are about the size of this notepad,
Yeah.
do it. Do something and get into it, and then you'll get so starved for it you can't put it down. You'll be like
Yeah.
Shane over there.
It's funny because I used to be the guy that would set up like a timer, and I would go, I'm going to read my Bible for 15 minutes, and I'm going to start in Proverbs or somewhere easy, and I'm just going to try and read for 15 minutes. And then I would set the timer, hit start, and then I'd read and read and read and read. And then I'd get up and walk away from the table, go make myself a pot of coffee, and I'd come back and I'd sit there and my eyes were turning red. And then I'd look up at the clock and I'm like, I still have 14 minutes left. 14 minutes? Are you kidding me? And then I would close the book and I'd be like, it's too hard. And I'd push the Bible to the side and I go, watch wrestling or watch something else, go watch Friends or anything else, unless I needed a good nap. And then I'd read Leviticus. And then I'd just be like, lights out. I'm reading Leviticus, instead of NyQuil, it's Leviticus. It's what's that one? There was a commercial, Buckley's, it tastes bad, but it works. And it's the same thing with Leviticus, it's hard to read, but it works. It could put you to sleep. That's how I used to be, right? I would have some of
Yeah.
my best naps after reading the Bible. Like I would just be in a coma, right? And then something clicked with my wife's little prayer. And I won't go into the whole story and everything, but something clicked where I started reading from the King James Bible for my personal testimony. And once I started reading like the book of Romans, I just kept reading it over and over again. And I found after a month of that, that's when the light came on. But then I would try different things like you. I would try listening to James Earl Jones audiobook. And I would speed him up to like 2 times, but then it didn't sound like him after a while. 3 times, 4 times speed. He sounded like a chipmunk. So imagine Darth Vader, Luke, I am your father. Like, that's not good, right? It's not good. It messes with your childhood. So I stopped that. I just went back to regular 1.5 times speed. But I would try different things. I like on Kindle, if you have one of these Amazon Fires, you can actually just read whatever book, even the gospel or the gospel moments here. On Kindle, you have the word runner and you can run through this whole thing and just speed it up so that you read 300, 400, 500 words per minute. And when you just practice those little things, when you do sit down to read the Bible, it starts getting easier as well, because you're trying all these little tricks, and then eventually, before you know it, you're sitting down and you just read the entire book of Genesis in one sitting, and you're like, oh, I guess I'm starting Exodus. Like that happens, whereas before it
Yeah.
wouldn't happen with me. So that's why, like, I get excited when I see something like this, Not So Random Gospel Moments. I'm like, I'm going to chew through this in one night. I'm just going to blast through this, because it's nice to have a refresher. And yes, it's 337 pages, but it's not a complicated read. Like, it's not like you need a
Yeah.
doctor or a bachelor of theology in order to get through this. Like, you summarize each chapter of the Bible nicely so that anybody can pick this up, read it, put it beside their Bible, and when they're going into Matthew, they could read a couple of chapters and then go and read it, hopefully out of the King James Bible or whatever version you're reading. And then you just,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just, there's something about hitting it from every different angle that's special.
Yeah, I agree. And I was looking on the comments here. We had a comment from Kathy, and I agree with that. Yes, Gary, that's why we should be careful what we listen to. I was talking about, how we memorize movies and stuff from the 80s and stuff we grew up with, and replicate, repeat, and it's in our mind and etched in there for forever. But I will say this: I remember in youth group, uh, I would be involved in they do Bible quiz. They'd have like a Bible quiz team.
Like door
That would
drills and all that stuff.
Well, I mean, they would take like two chapters of the Bible, and two representatives at least from each youth group would go on the platform. They'd have a place for you to sit, and they'd have a guy that would ask Bible questions, and most of them were multiple choice or answered,
Yep.
and then they'd have
Mhm.
moderators there to see if the answers are right, and you could take home a trophy. It was a little segment of a youth rally, but I remembered setting in on those, and I would study all month long 2 chapters, and with the little flashcards, and
Yep.
there's certain books of certain chapters of the Bible to this day that every time I read across it, it's like it's like, I don't know, it's like tasting something really good that you had when you was a kid and you're eating it now, and you're like, it brings me back
Yep.
to my childhood. Well,
Yep.
that's the way the word's been. And it's because I was listening to it, reading it, flashcards, and you've got that familiarity with something because you spent a month of your life in these two books. And I didn't win, but I mean, the thing is, there was so much of it that I grabbed from, and
Yeah.
that was during a time where reading comprehension was horrible. Now, some kids, they could read through it in the bus on the way and do really well on those things.
Yeah.
Me, I had to dedicate a couple, weeks of my life to memorizing stuff to remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But something to be
Yeah.
said for memorizing the word.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I think that all helps. Like for me, it is difficult for me to memorize the Bible. But what I find I excel at is I smash a whole bunch of the Bible into my mind. I overcompensate by reading lots of the Bible versus someone that maybe is reading a chapter and then they memorize it and then it'll stick with them. But for me, the only way for me to compensate is to just blast myself and just
yeah,
lots of the Bible, and then hoping that some of it sticks so that when we have a conversation on a live show, that I'm not dependent on having my Bible handy to look it up and go, what is this guy talking about? I have no idea, because I've never read it before. And that's how I used to be. So I always try and pride myself on the idea that if we're talking about something in the Bible, at least I'll have a snapshot of what that is. Like, I don't want to be embarrassed, especially with someone that's never read the Bible, and maybe they just glanced at something and then they say, hey, did you know that when Jesus was talking to Peter about paying taxes, that he actually blocked them in a doorway when Peter's trying to go in to grab taxes from all the disciples. Did you know that Jesus actually stopped him from going in? I'm like, I don't even remember that story. Like I never wanted to be that where you just, I'll have to go back and read that story to verify what you're saying. But now if somebody talks about it, I could see it in my mind. I could see the whole story, but I don't have it memorized. I just have chunks of the Gospels stored away somewhere in my head, it's kind of funny how that works.
Oh yeah. I was going to bring this up. I know if a person sits down and they're trying to read from Genesis all the way to Revelation, and they might even have a Bible schedule that they use, a little checklist or something like this, just going through each one. And I've used those, and I've even had calendars with it pre-printed on it at a church I was at. And it can really get discouraging sometimes when you're trying to get through it. It takes forever to get through it. I would recommend, there's an app. I know it's on Apple because I've got it on my Apple computer, and you can get it on your phone. But Bible Checklist, just search in your stores Bible Checklist, and what that does is it allows you. So if you read Genesis 1 today, chapter 1, you can check it. And then if you want to skip and read a Psalm 1, you can check it after you read it. And you can just go through the Bible however you want to go, randomly or whatever. And I've done that before.
Randomly. I like that.
Randomly, forget who I am.
Yes.
But because you know how it is, you might get kind of stuck in one gear, and you're like, whoa, I don't think I can take any Leviticus tonight. How about Jude? I'm going to read the book of Jude. I'll feel like I've accomplished so much because I've read a whole book tonight. It's only 20-something verses, I think, whatever it is.
It's funny. It's funny now is Leviticus is now one of my favorite books. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Golly. But it is. Like I love it. And I think one of the methods that I use, and it's cool that we talk about different methods. You like the checklist. I think my wife used to do the daily, you read one chapter a day and get through the whole Bible in a year. So 15 minutes gets you through the whole Bible. But what I found helps me is I have 2 bookmarks in my Bible. I have one for the Old and one for the New Testament. And my goal is real simple. I could never get from Genesis to the end of Revelation. And I've read the Bible 16 times in the last 3 years, just over 3 years. I could never do it.
Wow.
Because I got petered out in the heaviness of the Old Testament versus the New Testament. So what I found is I had to mix it up a little bit. I had to go old and then go back to new and then old, because there's something about reading for weeks at a time of Israel getting smashed by all the other nations because of all their wickedness. It brings you down a little bit. It's good, but it brings you down a bit. And then you got to get into the Pauline letters about who we are in Christ and all that. So I would mix it up. And the easiest way for me to mix it up would be, if I'm reading Genesis, I don't go to the New Testament or another book until I'm finished Genesis. Then I'm released from the obligation of reading that book. I can go New Testament, whatever, but just that little simple process of finishing the book that I start, like you get a book, you buy it from Indigo or Amazon. I think the goal is when you buy a book is to read it from beginning to end. You don't just read one page, put the book down, and then walk away and go, wow, I'm actually accomplishing something. No, like my son has all these big books. Where's the bookshelf? He has all these. Oh, they're huge, man. Let me just show you an example of a book. Let me show you what I'm talking about. 1 second.
While he's doing that, I like what Kathy says here. I open and read most times, and it's exactly what I need. How many times have you done that, Shane? Lord, speak to me. And you just open the book and start reading, and it's like, Lord, how in the world did you know I needed to know that right there, right then?
So here's an example. And I used to do that too. Like, Lord, show me something here, right? Like, look at this book. Pierce Brown. Okay, I'm not trying to endorse it. Dark Age. Don't even know what it's about. I haven't read it. But my son read this when he was like 20. It's like 700 pages. Look at this. Right? Like these
Wow.
kids. This one here, Brandon Sanderson, Words of Radiance. What's this one? This one is 1,077 pages, and my son blasts through this like it's nothing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't tell me that kids don't have an attention span. Don't tell me that they can't read the King James Bible when they're reading stuff like this. I can't read this. I look at it and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know who these characters are and all this kind of stuff. This must be corrupt. I think this manuscript has got too many errors because I don't understand it. It's like, well, dude, you're not into science fiction. Once you get into science fiction, you can start understanding the lore and all this kind of stuff. It's just, you just have to practice being in the Bible, being in the book, and then you'll get used to it. Because I don't believe that anymore. When you see books like this and you see young people reading Harry Potter and then they go to all these conferences where they read a book a day and they blast through all the Harry Potter series and all this stuff, and yet we're saying, no, the Bible's too hard for them. They, whatever. No, it's not true. They're reading a lot. It's just they're not reading it because you're presenting it in some kind of a weird way because you don't even read it. And if you're not reading it, they're not going to be interested in reading it either. Because imagine telling them, hey, why don't you read the Bible? And the first thing they'll say is, why don't you read it, Dad? Oh, that's a good point. You got me there, son. Stalemate. So if your nose is in the Bible, they walk by you every day and they see you nose to the Bible. That's going to perk some interest. Like my wife reads twice as fast as me now in the Bible. Like I can't keep up with her. And she said, you know what? I'm ditching the little one chapter a day kind of stuff because I find what happens is you read a chapter and then there's like 10 pages of commentary about what that chapter is from someone that dives into the Bible. And she's like, you know what? I'm just going to read the Bible for myself. And she ditched the commentary and she's just reading it for herself. I don't mind going to a commentary later, but not right out of the gate. You have to read the Bible for yourself. Then when you get to something like this, it's like, this is a blessing because now you get a snapshot of all four Gospels and you can read this as a daily devotion on top of what you're already doing. That's when it's beautiful, but not at the expense of reading your Bible. Like, and even my book that, I'm probably going to do a whole show talking about my book when it comes out. Cause I want to actually hold it in my hand. So I ordered some books and I sent some to some friends. But I want to hold it. There's something about having a book and holding it in your hand. There's something special about it, right? And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk into Indigo or Chapters with my book and I'm going to put it on the shelf. And then I'm going to be asking the lady there, I'm going to be like, hey, do you know where this Black Swan book? I heard he's a pretty good author. Like, oh, here it is. I got the last copy. And then run out of the store or something. I don't know. Something crazy, right? We'll see. I haven't thought it through yet.
Well,
but then I could just pretend.
It's good that you don't have your face on the back of the book. That way, in case, don't
That's
put
right.
two and two together.
I even thought about having where they have the desk where the authors sit in Indigo. And then I would watch when they go on a lunch break. And then I would sit down with my book and I would start signing autographs. And then as soon as they come back from their break, I would leave. Right. So I'm just spitballing here. I think that would be good.
That's awesome. I was going to take some of my books to our local bookstore, and I was putting it off. Well, we went in there like for my wife's birthday, we went into Bath and Body Works in the mall and get her some Smell Good, and walked past the bookstore. And I'm like, I really need to go in here, and the lights are off, the place closed down, and I asked the women in the Bath and Body Works, what happened to the bookstore? Oh, it closed like 3 months ago. Where you been? And
Yeah.
I'm like, man, the day I get a book out, and then they're not even there. But
Yeah.
anyway.
That's funny. Yeah, it's like in Canada, it feels like some of the, depending on what store you go in, obviously, but it feels like there is a little bit of a demise in some of the King James Bible books, if you will. I've noticed on the bookshelf in Calgary that it's shrinking. It's going like this, especially the number of King James Bibles. Like you're going to be hard pressed now to find one. You might find a few hard copies, but 2 years ago they had a whole shelf dedicated, like 2-3 shelves dedicated to the King James Bible. Now it's like it's hit and miss. But in Phoenix, Arizona, I went into one of their Indigo / chapters. There was a whole section of just King James Bibles. Big print, like 15, 17 print, font type, all that. Like, I'm like, this is like giant print, like basically 3 words on a page, and then all kinds of Bibles, Christian books. And I was like, this is interesting that this store is huge in Scottsdale. It was huge. So I think it's a myth that people aren't reading anymore, is my whole point. I think it's a myth.
Yeah.
I think it's making a comeback. And it's up to you, Gary, to help that comeback. Just keep writing more books. Write more books.
Well, I was pleased to announce to you before we started, because I was able to see, but we were waiting because there was a few changes and little tweaks, but your Kindle of your new book is out, and then your
Yes.
paperback was approved yesterday, and just a few moments ago, yes, the hardback, the
Yes.
hardcover is available in this book.
I'm going to
So
be
let's
buying the
turn the
hardcover. I can't wait to buy
so
the
let
hardcover.
oh, I know it, and that bright red, man, it's gonna dance off the page.
I think so. And I think even with this QR code, I'm just going to test it out here. Let me see.
Yeah, make sure it works. It doesn't go to like
Let's see.
10 days to flatter stomach or something.
Yep. Let me see here. Let's see if it works.
You too could get Black Swan's 90
See,
days to a slimmer hind end, and
let me blow it up here for a second. Let me see. I'm just trying to
Right.
see if I can take a picture. For some reason, it's not working on my phone, but that doesn't mean it's not working. It could be my screen because I have a light that's
Yeah.
blasting, and I've tried it before and it works. But I think, is it because it's red? It works for you?
It's working.
Yeah, so maybe it's because I got the light blasting in my face.
And sometimes I know if you got your camera phone up, open the camera app, sometimes you have to click that little detail button to where it picks up the details and
Oh, yes.
does what
Yeah,
it's supposed to. Otherwise, it just thinks it's taking a picture. But yeah, it's available, and it may take a while if you're watching from certain places. It may take a while for the hardback to show up.
Mhm.
I was on here earlier, so I know my phone's a little late, but it is showing up on my website. So the Amazon
No, that's
website,
cool. Yeah, and I think I might do like an audio version once it comes in. I want to read it. I don't know, like you can read it in a PDF a bunch of times, but there's something about reading it out loud as well. You know what I mean? That just makes it like settle inside of you. There's something about it, right? It's just a different flavor. So I want to do that. I want to take my time and just read the whole book and record my voice reading the whole book. I think that would be fun. And what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So your book, let me try your little scanner here and see if this works. Oh, yes. Not so random. It even shows up. It says notsorandom.com.
Or
Look at
it's not
that.
so random.com.
Look at that. Nice.
Yeah. But I do
Just in
want to
time
say
for
this.
Easter.
Yeah. Yep. Just in time for Easter. But I do want to say this because I think it's kind of neat. It's like we're like bookends to each other or something like that. But I was blessed to have you write the foreword for the introduction of my book. And then you, in turn, had me write the foreword for your book. And
Yeah.
it's, this won't be my last book, but it was kind of nice to where this book started with you and ends with, my book. I
Yeah.
get to start, and that's your first book. And
Yeah.
I really appreciated that. And to be able to write that for yours.
Yeah. I
But
appreciate it.
I just think that you're definitely going to catch the bug. I believe you already have, but you're
Yeah.
definitely going to have that bug to where you're like just as starved to death to put out a new video. You're just as starved to death to put out a book, and
Yeah.
both serve a purpose. They're all forms of media.
Hmm.
Go you therefore and preach the gospel. Some people take that word preach to mean proclaim or to publish.
Yeah.
Can be
Yeah.
comprehended that way. And
Yeah.
Lord knows the word's been published and sent forth, but I really believe there's something to be said for the written word, the
Yeah.
written testimony to be available. And I
Yeah.
think God's word will never pass away. They might be able to confiscate some of them, but God's word's going to have a funny way of showing up where it needs to show up in the last days to the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
And I do believe that the written word will go places that video probably won't be able to. At some point, they'll take the videos down.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of the watchmen are saying have it on USB drive, have it on CD and written word and in binders and stuff for people to find.
Yep.
There's reasons for all that.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's interesting you say about books. Like I'm slowly working on one called The Widow's Oil. That one, I think that one's going to be a fun one because it's more of a devotional. It's based on my reflections off of the story with Elisha and the widow and her two sons. Basically, the debtors are coming, the collectors, I should say, are coming to take her children away, and there's no guarantee that she's going to see them again. So working on that one. Yeah, just chip away at it at night, just write a little bit. But there's another book that I have in the cooker, and it's called uh, The Second Nature Code. And I sit there staring at the screen. I have the title, and it's blinking. The cursor's just blinking on the screen, and I'm like, this is going to be deep. And I'm just looking at it. I'm like, okay, let's go. Come on, pour out of me. Let's go. Right. So you start writing a little bit, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to put this on the shelf for a little bit because it's not coming. You know what I mean? It's not coming there. And when it does pour out of you, I tend to not stop because I worry that maybe the next day or the next week or whatever it is, it doesn't flow as nice. I don't know if you've ever experienced that when you're sitting down to write a book. Sometimes you just get into that flow where you're happy that you actually sat down to type because then it's just flying out of you. And then other times it's not happening. It's like, you know what? Not today. Not today.
Exactly. And I was going to say this is that uh, when I finished the A Mother's War, Son's Redemption, I was having Amy Musfeld write the forward for it. And I just sat down and I had 6 chapters in this book done and I sent it to her. It was a done deal. I was just waiting on her reply on the forward. And I wrote, chapter 7, urgency in a final hour. I wrote that as a idea of maybe God's given me this to say on a live stream or to do a video. And the Lord's like, it'll fit. Trust me, it'll fit. And
Mhm.
because it seemed like it was more of an invitational thing and it given urgency to the followers in the final hour. And so I just was like, I do have 6 chapters. It's kind of funny, the Lord's given me a 7th chapter, perfect number.
Yep.
And so I added that and I sent it to Amy, and she's like, wow, that's so profound, and that fits. And I said, that was written in just a few minutes this morning,
Yeah.
the day that was done. And she sent her part. I sent her that, and within a few days, that little book was published. And
Nice.
so I really like the fact that I have watch men and women involved in this, and
Yes. Yep.
Shane with you at the last one, and then Amy Musfeld with this other book, and then Is the World Worth Saving, my last children's book. Dorothea Mangula helped to write a forward for it.
Yep. I read that book. I actually read it.
You did read it, huh? Okay. Yeah, it didn't take you long, did it?
No, it didn't take me long at all. It was actually
How long did it take you? Did it take you long to color all the pictures? Did you get a black and white version?
No, I should. I didn't color it yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's fantastic. Oh, that's the coloring book version. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah, mine's already colored in. Thank you for that. Already done. But this is where it's fun, right? Like you just do little projects, little tiny things like this, and then you just chip away, and then when you're done, it's kind of nice, right? To have a little bit of a legacy, if you will, that you have something that may not be written in stone, but you have something to hand to someone, and it's almost like a gospel tract, if you will. You just hand it to someone. Hey, read this book, and then somewhere in it you have the gospel, right?
Exactly. And I encourage anybody that if you are, trying to just need some direction, I don't mind, sewing into people and a little of my time and to point you in the right directions, because I tell you, I think our conference called with like at least 3 primary book publishers, and then one this past summer. And I mean, this stuff can get very expensive, and there's so many gimmicky things out there that are vying for your time to say, hey, pay me and I'll pay the cashier, I'll get you published, and
Yep.
you don't get very many benefits in it. And just with the journey I've gone through, I've helped to publish 3 people with their books, and one of being my pastor. And he'll tell you, he's always felt like he was called to get a book out, but didn't know how to. And this was years ago. And this past year, I took one of his sermons, an audio of one of his sermons, and transcribed it. And we went through a process to get the spoken word to make sense as a book, because there is a big difference there. And his books are very short, anywhere from 20 something to 50 pages, thereabouts. And they're just little short words that are based off of a sermon he preached. And we've done 5 of them that way.
Nice.
And it's just amazing how that process has happened. But then I got a call from a pastor friend of mine out of the blue. He was needing some website help, and he asked me what I've been doing. And I told him, and he says, "You'll never guess what I'm working on." I said, "You're in the middle of a book." He says, "Nope, I'm at the end of a book. I just don't know how to get it published." So a friend of mine, Walter Boone, he just put out his first book like yesterday or the day before, and it's called Orphaned. It's called Orphaned in the Church by Walter Boone, and it's on Amazon. And you can see it at the bottom of my It's Not So Random page, the book section at the bottom. And just talking about leadership, you get involved in a church, and it's almost like the leadership just kind of abandons you in the process, and you're just left there and having to figure it out on your own. I mean, there's a lack of leadership. And he just tells his story, and he already had it written, just didn't know how to get it to the next step. And then I had a feeling that if you wrote the forward, Shane, you'd be writing a book, because you can't stop it. You can't stop at the little monologue. You need the whole show and the whole book. But anyway, that's what's been going on. is giving other people. And I've talked to various people on the phone that have called that I'm trying to get this book out, but I don't know what. And I had a good friend of mine. He called me. He says, I was working in a restaurant today and flipping burgers, and I'm like, I just don't have a legacy. It's funny you mentioned legacy. He's like, just don't feel like I've got a legacy to leave, to leave.
Yeah.
And here you are doing all this stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not as glamorous as it looks like, and
Yeah.
it's not as hard as it looks either.
Well,
Some of it's hard, some of it's easy. But
you've mastered the recipe of being able to publish a book quickly. For me, it's not so much the content isn't the hardest part for me. It's the fine tuning, squishing it down so that it actually fits into a proper sized book. The spine looks good and maybe enough pages and all this kind of the title page and the where do the credits go and the acknowledgments and all this stuff. That's all part of the package, but somehow for you, it's easy. And I think that's where the hiccup is, or the, what do you call it? The roadblock or the bottleneck is anybody can type something out, but to make it look like a book and to actually upload it finished without grammatical errors and all kinds of stuff and like weird things in it that doesn't fly on Amazon. Like you can't just write a book and throw it up there. Amazon's got AI software that scrubs it. They'll go, yeah, that's AI. They'll look even at the title page or whatever, and they'll be like, the cover page, they'll be like, that's AI. And then you have to fix it and all kinds of stuff. So eventually you'll have to get to a point where you're like, once you get your manuscript done, now you got the bottleneck of the publishing part of it. And I think that's where I'm going to throw out a stat, but I'm pretty sure 80% of the people fail or do it poorly or they give up right there, right when they're at the finish line. Because that's where I was at. I was like, Gary, this is hard, man, to get it published. Like I get it. It's free on Kindle or on the Amazon publishing, but it's like, man, you got to do this, and you got to write this, and you got to do this, and make sure this is formatted and this JPEG and a PNG and all this. And I'm like, oh man, I just want to write a book. That's all I want to do, bro. But you helped me with that, and I appreciate that. You just made it like, oh yeah, no, that's no problem. And then you send me something back, and I'm like, oh my Lord, that looks so professional, like just like that. Yeah. But you make it look easy, man.
Well, I tell you, it's just the Lord, because you can work on certain projects, and it's like certain colors, certain looks just come out. God just reveals different things to me like that, and and it's really hard because you use this in a spiritual side of things, for God and a church, or in this case, two believers. You're in the 51st state, so to speak, Canada, haha, and we're neighbors. Pledge allegiance to the same flag, soon to be. And no, I'm kidding you, brother, but we've got a good distance apart, different time zone, and all that, and. What gets me is we will order books on the same day. I'll order my author copy. I'll send you one. And in Canada, and where you live, you'll get the book a day before me. But I guess it's just God shining His light on you more than He does me. But
no, it's
I've
funny.
worked.
It doesn't
I've
take
worked
too long.
I've worked in the news business for about 7 years for an online newspaper,
okay, now it's beginning to make sense. I'm like, how is this stuff so easy for Gary?
Well, we had to deal with you have to have quick turnaround, and you just can't wait 2 or 3 days to write something and stick it up on the news, or
right.
Ads and stuff have to be done almost immediately, on the fly. So to get inspired to design something, if your heart ain't in it, I tell you the truth, it's not normal back when I was in my 30s to walk around a mall with my wife and see Vera Bradley bags or some of these foo things women wear and be like, oh, that's last year's model. That's last year's design. That
Yep.
bag is so last season,
Yeah.
and it's because I've had to work on Merle Norman cosmetic, ads or something like
Right.
that,
Yeah.
and Vera Bradley bags and Pandora and all that mess. And, it's hard to get inspired for that,
Yes.
and but then when a guy comes from a church and he's like, I want to advertise my church, I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. This is the break I need, and get inspired for that, and I mean, I
That's
liked
funny.
helping small business, I liked helping small business, and there's a lot of Christian businessmen in this town that I'm in, and it is refreshing to work with those people, but I tell you, when it gels and it clicks,
Yeah.
I mean, those are the projects that it's done. It's just done.
Yeah.
It's ready. You
You're a
can download it.
genius.
It's there.
Mega
No, I'm
genius,
not.
I would say. Yes, you are.
No,
Mega genius.
I've got to get this head through the door. So I can't have
No,
that.
like you make it look easy, man. And I went through the whole process and I'm like, oh man, if I didn't have Gary, I don't think my book would still be published. I don't think so. Because anybody, again, like I said, you can type stuff out and all that, but the bottleneck is the publishing part. That's, for
Yeah,
most people, like I think they just like, I don't want to look at this. I don't want to. And even sometimes watching a YouTube video on how to publish it, it'll be like a half an hour and they're saying do this and do that. And you're like, no, this one little thing, if I could solve this,
yeah,
all
yeah.
mysteries go out the window and they don't even talk about it. And it's like, man, get out of here.
Well, my problem with YouTube videos, sometimes, you'll go on something like that and be like, well, number one, they've changed their website after this video was posted. Now they've scrambled everything around so you can't find it anymore. And I'm looking for the new latest and greatest YouTube geek that's figured it out before me. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's hard, but um, you could put my contact. I could probably get my contact information and just stick it up here for you. But
Sure.
if anybody, and I'm really putting myself out here, but if anybody's got any kind of questions about publishing and stuff, I don't mind to answer it. Um, it's hard for me to talk and type at the same time, but I'm gonna put my email up
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
and
People might be wondering, how is Gary able to go on to Shane's channel and be able to pull up graphics and all kinds of stuff? Well, he's just that good. Somehow he hacked onto my channel and he's able to go in the back door and he's able to scramble things. Wow. See, I don't even have to do anything.
yeah,
It's just
no,
magic.
whatever. But if anybody you're struggling with, man, I've got something sort of wrote up. It's in a PDF or a Word document. I don't know what to do with it next. I don't mind working with you to see about how to get you out there and get you published. I just think there's an urgency right now to get the word out any way we can. We need to fire on all cylinders. I'm hoping in the next few weeks to be more on YouTube. I've kind of taken a break from it to do all these projects, but
Yeah.
I need to get the word out about it. And, this is a good resource to be able to do that. But I want something that's going to be left behind that may not be, might be off the radar a little bit and bless somebody when we're all out of here. But if anybody's got any questions or prayer requests or anything, you can send it to that email. And if it don't go to junk, I'll read it. Haha. But,
Oh, that's good. And you can tell right there that you have a great heart, to help people out and stuff. And I think the Lord is going to reward you as well. And I know sometimes in the wrong circle that could sound cliche, but I honestly believe like the stuff that you do is behind closed doors. Like it's not glamorous, it's not sexy. It's stuff that has to be done. But again, you have a gift of being able to do that and figure that part out. And I'm telling you, man, that is a huge blessing just to do that, and your calm disposition about you helps relax people as well, because they might go, oh, I don't know how to do this. And you're like, oh, it's just like this, click, and it's fixed.
Yeah.
Click. Something special.
Yeah. And, but I appreciate you and this time. being able to kind of highlight this, and then also a big announcement for your book. That's just
Yeah.
that's amazing. The first of many Black Swan, books to be out. I mean, that's worth eating a cookie right there. That's good
Yeah.
stuff.
I agree.
I need to
I
get
agree.
some. I need to get some milk. It'll go with the cookies. You're always saying, "Get your milk and cookies," and you know.
But that's usually making fun of people because they're just going off the basics of the Bible. Basics. Like,
Yeah, I know
does God
exactly
really
what
love
you're
me?
talking about.
Oh man, now you're making me hungry. Okay, we're gonna tidy this up with a nice little bow, but I wanna be able to show this real quick. So this is Gary's book, Not So Random Gospel Moments, Devotional, 90 Days in the Gospels, which I think it'll take you less than that. But if you just took your time and went
Mhm.
90 days, I don't want to tell people that you can get through the whole New Testament in less than a week. So in 90 days, you can get through the all four Gospels with Gary Gates. So that's pretty cool. And then my book is basically the defense of the King James Bible. Not that the King James Bible needs to be defended. Let's be clear. It can stand on its own. But I kind of got tired of people coming against the King James Bible. So I thought, you know what? I'm gonna write a book about it, and I'm gonna answer all the questions like, hey, isn't the King James Bible old fashioned? Isn't it hard to understand? Isn't it archaic? Like aren't like all the words that they use, we don't use them anymore. The modern translations, they just make it sound easier and all this stuff. Like I can't understand it. Like I go through all of that stuff in that book, and I think who's the book for? If you're a King James fan, a King James Bible fan, but you get stumped by some of these guys, even if you come across a channel where they're like, no, don't. I strongly, or they'll say something in their thumbnail like, I'll never recommend the King James Bible to anyone. If you run across that stuff, you need to buy this book and it'll answer all those questions so you can just sit back and relax and you'll be like, you know what? We have the preserved word of God. We have it. So that's what that book is about. Go check it out. Go buy Gary's book. We're going to wait as you buy it right now. Go buy it. It's not very much. What is it? Do you know what it is? The hardcover? How much is that? 20 bucks? 22 bucks? 24 bucks American? Something like that?
I,
Not much.
I,
Chump change.
I
Chump
would have
change.
to look. Yeah.
And then if you want to buy a paperback Kindle, I think it's $4.99 on Kindle. Like if you don't got like a cup of coffee, like that's how much this costs for a Kindle. And I think same thing with yours. I think it's like $8 or something. But you can just get it on Kindle and it's right there, right away. It's so nice. You can actually have the book right onto your Amazon Fire or your Kindle or whatever. And then when you go out to the beach or wherever it is you go, maybe you're on a little bus ride somewhere or going on a long trip. It's nice to have a book that you can just have access to right away and you can just flip through it and read it. And that's enough promotion. How about that? That's enough for today. But I think
Now,
it's important.
I did want to say about your book because I read it, and helped you, with the first kind of read throughs on it. But you came across very compassionate in that book. I want to reinforce that you did come across. It's come across in a very compassionate way. It's not like a book of gotchas or anything
Yes.
like that. I mean,
Yeah.
you really came through, and it wasn't really. I wouldn't even want to call it a debate. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't like a great big debate, but
Yeah.
you did. It was like you're answering all of our debate questions, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
you highlight different key things as to why we have all the versions we have now,
Yeah.
and why we still have the good old KJV.
Yeah.
And if you're kind of like I've always had it, I can't see reading anything else. It'll help reinforce. It'll help answer questions that people have that ask you about it.
And
And
yeah.
then if you're one of these that likes to read whatever, it'll just help educate you a little bit of why we have the Bibles we have. And it's a good
Yeah.
read.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And again, I'm not trying to go after people that are reading other versions.
Right.
I'm going after the people that are slamming the King James Bible. That's my target. I'm going after you with extreme prejudice. So if you're targeting King James and you're saying it's garbage, it's corrupt, King James was corrupt and all this kind of stuff, that's who I'm going after because it's not true. So I'm going after that. I'm going after those that have degrees of uh, textual criticism behind their name, that they feel like that they have a right or an obligation to attack God's word. Those are the people that I'm going after, the scholars that pretend that they're so smart. I'm going after you. I know I'm not very smart, but I can pick out some of these phonies as well, some of these people that are like they're coming after the King James Bible, but once you start unraveling their motivation behind it and all this stuff, their house of cards crumbles. And that's who I'm going after. So I'm not trying to pick on anybody that's like, you know what, I have a pretty good devotion reading, whatever. No, that's not. This book isn't for those people. It's for people that are getting hammered because they would mention something like, oh, I love reading the King James, and then right away somebody's like this, whoa, you know that book is corrupt, right? You know it's full of errors, you know it's archaic, you know the words, we don't speak that way. Like right away they come at you, and you'll never see this with any other version of the Bible. You can say, you know what, I got something out of the NIV, and they're like, yeah, you know what, bro, I got the same thing too. Thank you for sharing. God bless you. But as soon as you say, you know, I got an insight from the King James Bible. Whoa, 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 whoa. Everybody gather around the circle. Let's get this person saved because their mind is corrupt. Like, it's weird how that happens, right?
Yeah.
So you can only take that for so long. And then you're like, you know what? That's it. That's it. I'm going to write a book about this. So
Yeah.
that's what
And,
the book is
and you
about.
have so many insightful things in regards to the way things have been copyrighted.
Yeah.
Not going to go into detail. Got to leave a few secrets for the reader.
Yeah, you got to leave a
And then,
few. Yeah.
and then
Don't
the
give
whole
away
thing
the whole
about
book.
the things about Shakespeare. You know, we don't touch that, and it's Old English and all that. But we'll sure crucify the King James Bible, but we won't touch. Don't touch the classics. Don't touch the classic,
Yes. Yeah.
literature. But anyway, you need to
Yeah.
read that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And yeah, I agree. You know, I'm going to read it again a few times, and it's, you know, puts a little
Might have
edge
a
about
cookie
you.
with
But
it.
might have a
Might have a
cookie.
little cookie with it.
I actually had a chocolate chip cookie before I came on. Actually, my wife made a deadly, deadly cookie. It's got Reese's Pieces
Ooh,
from a chocolate
hallelujah.
bar. Yeah, from a chocolate bar. You know those little Reese's Pieces, tiny ones. She put that. So it's not chocolate chips, it's Reese's Pieces chunks in the chocolate chip cookie, if you could believe that. And I'm like, oh my
Hey,
goodness.
she's a keeper. She's a keeper. She's awesome. You got to keep that. Mhm.
Well, brother, if you don't mind sticking around in the back, any final thoughts, anything else? Where can they go to find all your books?
It's not so random.com and or just Google Gary Gates, Gary Paul Gates. There are other Gary Gateses, so make sure you look for Gary Paul Gates
Yeah, not
on
to be
Amazon. But
confused with Bill
with
Gates.
all the yeah, that's Uncle Bill didn't help me, but you can go to It's Not So Random and it'll take you straight over there. But um, stuff for children, stuff for teenagers, stuff for whoever, all age groups. So we're we're hitting every demographic.
Awesome.
But
Appreciate that. Appreciate you. Thank you for being on my show today. Thank you for everything that you've done for me as well, helping me out, even with my channel, with your little animations, everything you see on my channel. It's all Gary, basically. Just this is his channel. Thank you, brother. I'll just toss you in
appreciate
the
you.
back, and then I'll just say goodbye to everyone.
Bye bye,
Awesome.
everybody.
See you later. All right, that was the legendary Gary Gates, and I just wanted to say Thanks again, Gary, for being on my show and to basically spend a little bit of time with me talking about your up and coming, your books, the ones that you already have, and then also some of your future projects as well. I really appreciate it. So we're going to go out. This time we're going to do a little bit different. We're going to go out with one of his trailers for his book, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye for now.
Discover the life of Jesus in 90 days with not-so-random gospel moments. Written by Gary Paul Gates, with a heartfelt foreword by friend and YouTube host, Shane Landstrom from Black Swan Revelations. Have you ever wondered why the story of Jesus is told 4 times in the Bible? Not-so-random gospel moments is a 90-day devotional designed to guide you through the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, one chapter at a time. Each day includes a scripture reading, key takeaways, and insights to help you deepen your understanding of Christ's life, teachings, death, and resurrection. Whether you're new to the Gospels or seeking a fresh perspective, this journey will strengthen your faith and illuminate the richness of God's Word. Take the challenge. Spend 90 days with Jesus. Be transformed. Get your copy of Not-So-Random Gospel Moments on Amazon. Now available in paperback, hardcover, or as an instant download to your Kindle app or device.
Black Swan Revelations here on YouTube brought you today's mind-bending journey. Dive into the discussion, your comments, questions, prayer requests, and powerful testimonies of Jesus' love are what fuel this community. Did today's episode hit home? Smash that like button. New here? Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a live stream or a video upload. Thanks for being part of today's adventure. Catch you in the next video, or maybe even in the clouds. Stay curious, stay blessed.